Chapter 21. Lost? I take a look around. The Met is nowhere to be seen. We're on a pavement that runs between a low wall with the park behind it and a long avenue with a few cars going by. Across the avenue are tall buildings with lights in a few of the many windows. "You're such a putz!" I tell the high priest. "Perhaps we should try to retrace our steps," he says. "But wait, even if we manage to find our way back to the Met, the guards would be waiting for us. Elena may have already been taken into custody." He becomes quiet, staring into space as he always does when he's thinking. Elena. I feel so guilty. If only I hadn't been such a glutton, she would still be free. The high priest would be eating his 4 sandwiches and his Danish, while washing it all down with coffee, and I would be nice and warm under his coat, hating his guts. You don't know how good you have it until you lose it. That includes being under the high priest's coat. Without its warmth, my tail and limbs are getting numb, and my whiskers are sparkling like the crystals of the chandelier in Elena's library. "Rapa Hamen," he says. "You are a snowcat." He starts to brush snow off me, oblivious to the thick layer covering his head and shoulders. I want to tell him he's a snowman, but I can't move my mouth. "Rapa Hamen, what's wrong?" I hear, just before passing out. When I come to, I'm under the high priest's coat again, and he's blowing his warm breath on my head. Feeling has returned to my limbs, and when I give the old tale a try, it moves. I try my mouth. "What happened?" "This snow, Rapa Hamen, is as dangerous as it is beautiful. It is like an enchantress who lures you to touch her, but once you have, she will do with you whatever she pleases, even take your life." Why couldn't he simply say, "Rapa Hamen, I just saved your frozen ass"? But if he did, he wouldn't be the high priest I know. "Where are we going?" I ask. "Not back to the Met, I hope." "No, home. Perhaps the guards didn't take Elena into custody after all, and she will be there waiting for us. If not, we can call the Met using her telephone and, well... But first, we have to get home." "Are you sure you know the way?" "I know how this city is laid out. The avenues run north-south, and the streets run east-west. The streets are all numbered. That little sign up there says 5th Avenue. The other says East 90th Street, and to our left is a park. The taxi that took us to the Met traveled on West End Avenue, then went east through the park. Every street west of the park has its double east of the park, and vice versa." He pauses to catch his breath. The cold air makes it hard to talk, especially if you're saying so much. "Elena lives on West 107th Street, he continues. "If we keep walking straight on this avenue, we will reach East 107th Street. Then, if we proceed west through the park, we should reach West 107th Street and find Elena's home. Capisci? Capisco." But I don't understand. Why would a city have streets that double each other? Something I'd like to ask Elena if we ever get back to her. I wish I had as much faith in the high priest's theory as he does. He pats me on the head and calls me Puss in Boat. This time, I find his use of the nickname comforting. "I must keep moving," he says. "If I do not, what happened to you will befall me." "I'm afraid I lost my tube." "You do not need it now, Rapa Hamen. It is dark and the streets are deserted. No one is going to see you. I will leave the top button undone. Just look through the gap." Like 2 lost children yearning for home, we make our way down the white avenue. The snow comes down thick and steady, carried by a strong wind and, like an Egyptian sandstorm, partially blinds us. How I wish Eshet would stop sending her snow. Struggling against the wind, the high priest is slowing down. I hear his labored breathing and, since my head rests against his chest, feel it as well. His lungs are expanding and contracting quickly. "Rapa Hamen," he says in a whisper. "I must rest a while. Since our arrival in New York, you have gotten bigger." I should be offended by his remark, but he saved my life twice in the last 2 weeks, so I decide to be forgiving. He walks over to one of the low benches along the park wall, scrapes the snow from a space just wide enough to accommodate his rear end, and sits down. "Ah, that is better." Then he rubs his hands together and blows his breath on them, as he did on my head earlier. The avenue is deserted except for a few cars and a couple of humans walking their dogs hurriedly. A man and his dog cross the avenue and come towards us, and even in the haze of falling snow, I realize this dog is like no other I've seen. No Egyptian dog would ever wear a coat and shoes. Both he and his master look at the high priest with a superior expression as if to say, "This is what you deserve for being a drunkard." When the dog comes over and starts to pee against a leg of the bench, the man pulls him away before he can finish, but not out of regard for the high priest. His expression says the bench is no longer suitable for his dog to pee against. The man sitting on it has contaminated it. The dog starts to bark, but probably not at the high priest. Even a silly dog like this one must have smelled me by now. The man pulls on the leash, the dog stops barking and returns to his master's side, and they resume walking, but not before giving the high priest one last dirty look. But there's justice after all. As they're walking away, the man slips, falls in the snow, and lets go of the leash. The dog runs back to the bench and raises his leg, intending to finish what he started. I stick my head out and meow at the top of my lungs. Scared out of his wits, the dog whimpers and flees as if pursued by a demon, skidding and falling on his ass repeatedly before reaching his master, who has just gotten up. A fine pair, these two, the man massaging his backside and the dog licking his. "That was a nice distraction," the high priest comments. "Was it not, Rabba Haman?" It certainly was. My friend Pepe would have loved it. We had better move on now. As we resume our journey, I wonder which street this is. I can't read the street signs because of the falling snow. The high priest shivers, and I do too, but not from the cold so much as the thought he might soon succumb to it. "I see something out there," he says, pointing into the park. "It looks as if someone has a fire going." "Yes, it's a fire," I say. "Let's go and see. Maybe we can get warm." He walks over to the nearest bench, steps up on it, then pulls himself up over the low wall and enters the park. But walking in the park is much more difficult than walking on the pavement. The terrain here is very uneven, and I feel the high priest struggling to keep his balance. Suddenly, there's an expletive, then a fall. He's fallen forward, and I'm under him, being crushed by his weight. "Are you all right?" I manage to ask. No answer. "Gato Haman! Gato Haman, wake up! Wake up!" Again, no answer. I can't move and can barely breathe. With the little strength that remains, I give out a loud meow, then quietly await death. Death's voice doesn't sound as I imagined. It's warm and pleasant. "What do we have here? It looks like a sick man or a drunk." When death turns us over, I see he also doesn't look the way I imagined. Instead, he's an old man with an unshaven, deeply lined face, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and holding a bottle. "I thought I heard a cat," Death says. "Never seen one this big, though." Only a few minutes ago, the high priest was commenting on my size. It must have been a foreboding. Death leans forward, extends his big hands towards me, then smiles and tickles me under the chin. I lick his hand. He's flesh and blood like me. His face is so close I can see the whites of his eyes, too white for someone as old as he appears to be. His gaze penetrates my soul. "Let's get you out of there," the man says. He puts the bottle in one of his pockets, unbuttons the high priest's coat, pulls me out of the straps, and sets me on his shoulder. Then he leans forward again and lifts the high priest as if he were a baby. When he straightens up, I'm high above the ground. The man is tall, much taller than the high priest. I dig my claws in his heavy wool coat to keep my balance. He carries us to the fire and carefully puts the high priest down in a sitting position, his back against a tree. It looks like your friend needs a blanket. I remain perched on his shoulder as he walks to a cart standing nearby, rummages through it for a while, and then pulls out a small blanket. When we return to the high priest, the man puts it around his shoulders, then sits by his side, taking the bottle out of his pocket and uncorking it. This'll revive him. He puts the bottle to the high priest's mouth and gently pours. The high priest coughs and opens his eyes. What's happened? He asks me. I don't answer, and he looks at me as if to say, You're right. You shouldn't be talking. The man answers for me. I heard your cat meow, he says. When I went looking, I found you face down in the snow. You have a big bump on your forehead. Eshet's snow has stopped, and I can see the bump clearly. The high priest tries to get up, becomes dizzy, and sits down again. A noise like the death rattle of a hippo comes from his stomach. It sounds like you're starving, the man says. He's starving, all right. He hasn't eaten since last night. I dig my claws in when the man again gets up, walks over to the cart, and rummages in it. It was here, he mutters. I saw it before. Oh, good. Holding a loaf of bread as if it were a trophy, he walks back to the high priest and, laughing heartily, sits down opposite him, the fire between them. He breaks off half of the loaf. It cracks like bread that's days old, and offers it to the high priest, who grabs it as if his life depended on it. He takes me by the scruff of the neck, lifts me off his shoulder to the ground, then breaks the other half of the loaf into chunks, which he puts in front of me. I bet you're hungry too, he says. Eat. I am. I do. The bread is dry, but delicious. My name is Ezekiel, the man says. Mine is Gato Haman, the high priest says with his mouth full. And the cat is Rapa Haman. You're not from New York, are you? I am a visitor, the high priest replies, chewing on a morsel of bread. I was separated from my friend Elena and became lost in the snow. What an understatement. I was wondering, Ezekiel, would you know how to get to West 107th Street and Riverside Drive? Of course I do. But if I were you, I'd get myself out of the park first. I'll take you to Fifth Avenue. I look up at Ezekiel, and to thank him for his kindness, rub my head against his arm. He laughs and begins to tickle me under the chin. When I was a small boy, I had a cat, he says. His name was Beignet. I loved him as much as my mama and papa. When my mama sent me to the store, he always followed me. We were together all the time. I'd go fishing in the pond with Beignet. He'd be sitting on my shoulder staring at the water. The first catch was always his. One day when I got back from school, Beignet wasn't on the porch waiting for me the way he always did. I called to him, but he didn't answer. Ezekiel has stopped tickling me, and his hand now rests heavily on my back. I gave the cat call. Mino, Mino, Mino. Beignet's food bowl was on the porch untouched. It wasn't like him to go exploring on an empty stomach. I called again. Mino, Mino. Beignet, Beignet. I called all day and night. I called all week, then the next, but he didn't come back. I hope the story isn't over. I want to hear that Beignet came back to him. Ezekiel's face is streaked with tears. One rolls down his cheek and falls to my lips. I lick it. It tastes sweet. The high priest has turned away to hide his tears. But that was long, long ago, Ezekiel says. Donkey's years ago. With these words, he closes the door on the painful memory. I wonder how many times during his long life he's opened and closed that door. The silence that follows his last words proves healing for all three of us. I resume eating the bread. Ezekiel's smile returns, and the high priest's emotions are under control again. He's the one who breaks the silence. Do you have a home, Ezekiel? My home is everywhere. Tonight it's here. The high priest resumes his questioning. Do you have a family? No more. My parents are long gone. I didn't marry. I move around this big country. I've done many jobs. My last job, I worked with stone. What did you build? I worked on a cathedral. I shaped the stone of the past so it would be there for the future. Ezekiel is cryptic, like the high priest, who isn't confused by his answer. The past must be maintained. One needs foundations to build upon. If you'd like to see my work, go visit St. John the Divine on your way home. Is it like the Met? You could say that. How will I recognize it? You'll know it when you see it. When you get there, look at the central portal. You'll see the stone figures of the Portal of Paradise. That's some of my best work. Portal of Paradise. The cathedral is a temple. Ezekiel's revelation has left the high priest at a loss for words. I'd better take you to Fifth Avenue. If you hurry, you'll get to St. John for the Sunday choir. You'll like that. Ezekiel stands up. The high priest follows his example. Then Ezekiel bends down and picks me up. But this time he puts me on the high priest's shoulder. We leave the warmth of the fire and walk through the park till we reach the wall separating it from the street. Well, here we are, my friends, Ezekiel says. Walk up Fifth Avenue till you reach 110th Street, then go left. It'll be a bit of a hike, but the street will take you straight to Riverside Drive. Another left 3 blocks, and you'll be home. Thank you, Ezekiel, the high priest says, for saving our lives. Surely we would have died without your help. Farewell, my friend. Goodbye, Gato Haman. Goodbye, Rappa Haman. Please don't forget what I've told you. I hope you enjoy seeing the cathedral and get home safe and sound. Eshet snow begins to fall again. Ezekiel is so tall his eyes are level with mine. The whites are brighter than ever, and his gaze seemed to bore into me. He gives me a big wink, tips his hat, abruptly turns and walks away. Soon he's a ghostly figure. Then I see only the snow.